Welcome to the Red Sneaker Podcast, your guide to success in the worlds of writing and publishing. Now, here's your host, best-selling author and founder of the Red Sneaker Writers Center, William Bernhardt.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining me for the podcast, and a special thanks to those of you who have been sharing links, sharing reviews, and chatting up about the podcast, spreading the word. I really appreciate it. Today's podcast will feature an interview with two of my favorite mystery writers, Will and Julia Thomas. But before that, the news. First item of news has to do with Amazon and their brick-and-mortar stores. They've announced that they may open as many as 3,000 Amazon Go stores. Now, just to be clear, the Amazon Go stores are grocery stores, or some would say convenience stores. They've got prepared foods and groceries, no cashiers, seem to be really catching fire. But what about the bookstores? Aren't they going to open a bunch more of those? Well, I think the answer is yes, but they're still experimenting with the concept. They've just opened a new store called Amazon 4-Star in the Soho district of New York City. Why 4-Star? Well, you may have already guessed, because the only things they're going to sell in the store are books and other items that have 4-star or better reviews on the Amazon webpage. It's not just books in these stores, it's also got consumer electronics and kitchen items and toys and games, but books are in there somewhere. Now, what does this mean if it's 4-star reviews or better? Well, the first thing it tells you is that Amazon is still tinkering, still experimenting, trying to get the concept for these stores down before they go large with it. This is the history of Amazon. After all, they have always been innovators rather than imitators, but I think we can safely assume that once they think they've got the idea down pretty much, they will go wider with it, go national with it. But let's also talk about that 4-star review aspect, because that's particularly important to writers. You know, sometimes we despair about the reviews. I've mentioned that before, the reviews that we get on Amazon pages, or try to control it, but it's hard to do. At some point, if you have so many reviews, it tends to average out. If you look at any of the pages for the best-known, best-selling authors out there, you'll find the average review is going to be somewhere in the middle, high 2s, middle 3s, something like that. But if your review page is a little less crowded than that, you may want to curate that to some extent by asking people to post reviews. It's not uncommon. You've probably been asked to do so, and you probably will do so at some point in the future. Here's my message. If you're reviewing a page, particularly as a favor for someone, give it a 5-star review. Anything else is going to drag their average down. I know that seems like great inflation, but that's the reality of the situation. If you don't feel comfortable giving a 5-star review, just don't review it. But giving a 4-star review or less isn't helping. Next news item. I wanted to talk a little bit about Aretha Franklin. As you probably know, she passed a few weeks ago. Did you also realize she left no will or trust or any instructions on how her estate should be divided or distributed? You might think that's incredible. And then you think, oh wait, didn't Prince do the exact same thing a little further back when he passed? And the answer would be yes. This is an incredibly problematic thing to do. In the music world, for instance, rights are always being distributed. Everybody associates Aretha Franklin with her most famous song, Respect, which she sang, but Otis Redding wrote. Traditionally, most of the royalties for a song go to the composer, not the performer, but of course that can be altered by contractual relations. Do her heirs, or potential heirs, know what all her contractual relations and arrangements do? Do even all of her managers and lawyers know? The answer is probably not, but at any rate, she's made it 1,000 times more complicated. The same thing applies to you, red sneaker writers, and your intellectual property, because from a legal standpoint, that's what writers create. That's what books are, intellectual property. You may know everything there is to know about your contractual relations, or you may not, but do your potential heirs. Usually, royalties are going to be split between the author, a publisher, or a distributor, agents, subsidiary agents. Are your heirs going to know all of that? Are they going to even be able to lay their hands on contracts? Don't make it hard on everybody you know and love. Call your attorney today and make a will. Spell it out so you don't leave a puzzle behind. One more legal item, and let me just say up front, since we're talking about legal matters, that I am not acting as your attorney. This does not create an attorney-client relationship between you and me, and I am not offering legal advice. What I am doing is reporting what the Authors Guild issued this week. Now, you are probably aware that we got a new tax code or a revised tax code last year with the passage of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. But here's a provision that you may not know about. Among other things, the new tax code provides that owners of certain so-called pass-through entities may take a 20% deduction on their qualified business income. And this is true whether it was earned through an S-corp, a partnership, a sole proprietorship, or even an unincorporated self-employed individual, like possibly you, the red sneaker writer. People have been wondering, can authors take advantage of this 20% deduction? And the answer, according to the Authors Guild, is yes, absolutely. And you don't have to create any special tax entity to do so. As an unincorporated, self-employed individual, you are automatically treated to this pass-through all by yourself. Authors filing singly who have taxable income of $157,500 or less, or married people filing jointly who have a combined taxable income below $315,000 are eligible to take this new 20% pass-through deduction on their writing income. And that's a significant deduction that you can take if you make below those monetary thresholds. If, on the other hand, you're making more than $157,000 per year, well, I'm just not going to talk to you anymore. My interview today is with Will and Julia Thomas. As you may have guessed, they're a married couple, and as you may already know, they both write mysteries. Will is the author of the highly successful Barker and Llewellyn's Victorian mystery series. Some have compared to Sherlock Holmes and Dr. Watson. The newest book, the 10th in the series, will be out in November. It's called Blood is Blood. But in the last few years, his wife, Julia Thomas, has already also started publishing mysteries. The most recent of those is called Penhale Wood. Ever wondered, what's it like when two people in the same household both write? And how do you go about writing a really good mystery? Here's what they had to say. Julia, Will, thanks for being part of this podcast.
Thank you for having us.
It's great to be here.
It's my pleasure. You are my favorite husband-wife writing duo other than my own. Did I say that right? Other than the marriage of which I am a part. So, Julia, what is the best piece of advice you would give somebody who aspires to write?
I would say one of the most important things that you can do to be a good writer is to be a good reader. And not just to read a lot, but to read well. To read classics, to read important prize-winning books. Read higher than you normally read. Read to something that you aspire to.
That sounds good. Will, same question.
My answer would be to be willing to send it out. A lot of people think, my stuff isn't good enough yet. Well, you don't know until you send it out, and the worst they can do is say no.
And possibly will, maybe for a long time, but you just keep plowing through that, right?
Right.
What was I think people would be interested to hear how you went from not published to now 10 or 11 books in the Barker and Llewellyn series. What was your journey?
Well, I always had this saying that I wasn't really paying my dues because I sent things out, and the very first thing that went out was accepted by an agent, and she was able to find 2 or 3 publishers that would be interested in doing the books, and they finally had a bidding war, and we chose one of them, and it's been going pretty much great.
Simon & Schuster, right?
Yes.
Are you telling me you got the first agent you approached?
Actually,
Yes.
we had 2 or 3 agents that wanted to.
Oh, man, nobody wants to hear this story. I've never heard the like of that in my entire life. I have read that first book. I know it's terrific, but, man, that puts you ahead in terms of scoring with publishing world. That puts you ahead of most Pulitzer Prize winners, I think. Julia?
I was going to say, with Will's book, when he finished it, I said, give it to me, because he didn't know what to do with it. So I did a little bit of research, came up with a list of the top 40 or 50 agents I could think of, sent it out to the top 5, and then we got several offers out of the top 5.
Now I'm understanding the secret of this deal.
There she is, right there.
Yes, expert research and marketing. Will you license her out? I think this could be... At the next writers' conference, we'll just make Julia available. Let her pick your agent or something like that.
I'm worried with her books that she's going to take off and I'm going to be left in the dust looking for somebody to help me.
Well, who knows? You've done 10 or 11 books, depending on when this podcast airs, but a bunch of books in this highly successful Victorian mystery series. And Julia, you've now got 2 books, right?
That's right.
Tell me about those.
Well, I started writing my first book when Will wrote his. And when he finished his and I finished mine around the same time, in about 2002, we sent them out, and he had pretty much an instant success story. And I didn't sell the first book. So then when he wrote the second, I wrote a second. And the same thing happened. You know, he already had a 3-book deal, so his was sold and mine didn't. So
Boy, that's got to be irritating.
Well, it was challenging. It really was. I found myself as a writer because I found out that I could edit. And so I started with the very first book, Editing Some Danger Involved. And as I edited and decided that I needed to be the best reader I could be in order to be the best editor I could be, my own writing skills grew. And I gave up for a little while. And then I was at a writing conference where Will was speaking, and he was on a panel with Dennis Lehane, who wrote Mystic River and Gone Baby Gone, and so many other wonderful books. And I was thinking, I can't do it. I have failed novels in the drawer. But as he was speaking, he said, the 5 worst novels in the English language were at home in his bottom drawer. And I thought, no, they're not. They're in mine. But then he said the key that turned me around and got me going, he said, I realized that in each one I was teaching myself a different aspect of writing. In one, characterization. In one, plotting. In another, dialogue. And I realized I had done the exact same thing. I had a dialogue-heavy one and everything. So I was teaching myself kind of a master course in writing by not giving up.
Now, what is it with you two and mysteries? Is it just a fascination with murder, or what's going on here?
Well, we have some interesting conversations at home, I'll put it that way.
Yeah, don't do that on the bus. You'll scare people.
It's funny because I had decided not to write a mystery and not to set a book in England because that was Will's area. That I was not going to infringe on his territory.